What's going on, Junkie Nation? Gorgeous George and Go always deliver the big names. We're going to talk to Sara Collins today, who's headlining the upcoming card that's taking place out on the other side of the pond. It's called Bellator Champions Series London. Her opponent is going to be Leah McCourt. These are two of the top featherweights in the world. Sara brings an undefeated record of 5-0. How are you, Sara?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Good. Now the pressure's on because we're the last of like 8 interviews you've had today.
Yeah.
And it sounds like not all of them have been fun, but no one's asked a dumb question, and I'm scared to ask a dumb question. But okay, here we go. Does this fight mean anything? Because I'm impressed with only 5 fights, but you've already taken out 2 OGs in the game, along the way. So you right away got our attention. I've ranked you in USA Today Sports MMA Junkie rankings, and that usually doesn't happen to 5-0 fighters. And Leah McCourt's a big name. But what happens? This is where we're confused. Does the winner get Cyborg? Or have you been told that she's now over at PFL doing her thing? And because I was wondering, could this be for the title?
Well, so far it's not for the title. I haven't been told anything so far about my next fight. So all concentration is on this fight, and whatever happens, we'll deal with the next fight after this one.
It'd be great if the winner of this fight fought at the end of the year and for Chris to defend the Bellator title, in my opinion. And so, yeah, I know your focus is on this fight itself as well, but what are you hoping for towards the end of the year? Like, are you kind of on the same track as me, or will you turn the page? Because it does seem like Bellator and PFL will almost complete a merger.
Yeah, I would love to fight again before the year is finished, just so I can get at least 2 fights in this year. And if it's against the winner of Chris and Larissa, I'm happy to fight one of them. I think that would be awesome. But yeah, any fight before the end of the year after this one would be good as well.
So something like the Sorensen fight, right? Quick work, round 1, unscathed, healthy, let's go.
That's always the goal. Fighting for 1 minute is way better than fighting for 15.
And like I say, you've had a short but pretty amazing Bellator record so far, run, because you've beaten Sinead and you've beaten Pam Sorensen, and right away you already have Leah McCourt, so you're really off to a great start. But I want to ask you, before you even get to 10 fights, did you ever have your goal set? This is what I want to do by my 10th fight?
Yeah, so I think because there's not many women in Australia that do MMA, I think the goal was always to just at least get 3 fights in Australia, and then we'd be able to look for international fights. And it worked out that on my 4th fight, I did fight internationally on Bellator against Pam. So this was always the goal, to get here by my 4th, 5th fight.
Are you just that good? Or, a lot of these ladies have been fighting for a long time, and so you've caught them pretty quick. But at the same time, the fights get bigger each time, right? And so you can always add some seasoning, round out your game. Would you even want to fight for these big fights that I mentioned? Pacheco, Cyborg, whoever, or just pretend that the title's blank, anything, before you can continue to get better?
I think because I haven't had that many fights, but I've been, like, my first fight was in 2019. So that's 5 years ago. I feel like I am more experienced than my record shows, just because I haven't had the opportunity to fight that many times. It's only once a year, which is nothing. I feel like I am ready, and I've done a lot of work, especially in the last 2 years, to round out my game, and I hope that shows in this next fight.
So do you remember a moment in your career where you felt like you were 100% sure this is what I want to do for a living, this is what I want to do for a career? When did it become real for you?
I think not until I fought in Bellator and I got my first paycheck, and I was like, oh, okay, this is pretty fun, and I get paid pretty well, so yeah, maybe I'll keep going.
And there's so many fighters today, like George mentioned earlier, we interview a lot of them. How do you feel like you stand out? amongst all the other females, not just in your organization, but in the world? Like, are there things about you that you feel stand out over some of the others?
I feel like I'm just willing to take on anyone. I'll fight anyone. I'll always turn up. I'm not going to pull out. I think that's what sets me aside. You can count on me to be there, to show up and to fight.
What's your dream scenario? If we spoke to you next year at this time, what would you want to be talking about?
I want to be talking about at the same time this time next year, I would have had at least 2 fights by this time next year, and we can talk about how I'm still undefeated, and I'm about to defend my belt.
Oh, okay. So by then you've captured the belt and now you're defending it. Got it. So 2 in addition to the one that's taking place here in a few days.
Yeah.
I was thinking this way. Okay, you beat McCourt,
Mm-hmm.
then you fight Cyborg either at the end of this year or early next year. See, I don't know if they'll still call it Bellator Champions Series. I don't want to talk out of my rear end, but we've heard that Bellator this year's doing what they're doing, but next year maybe they merge. I don't even know. But let's just say something like that happens. And if you were to fight, we'll say, to be fair, to Larissa Pacheco, because she's a stud as well. The winner, Pacheco and Cyborg. And then by then, who knows what's going to happen, right? Because right now they have a flyweight regular season at PFL with playoffs, but they let go of the 45. So who knows what's going to happen by then? Maybe you're all under just one banner and you are defending the belt. And that would be pretty amazing at 7-0, honestly.
Oh, yeah, that would be super amazing. I mean, that is the dream. You asked me what the dream is, and for this time next year, and that's the dream. I mean, I don't know the chances of that actually happening, but we can only dream.
What were you doing prior to starting in MMA? You started the sport a little later. You're 34 now.
Mm-hmm. So I did judo from the ages of 7 to 24, 25. And when that just became too much on my body, too many injuries, I decided to then move into MMA.
I was just about to ask if hopefully you didn't have wear and tear on your body or mileage, like they say, from MMA. But yeah, judo is one of those that can really mess you up. And were they serious injuries, or have they been the type of injuries that have slowed down your progress in MMA?
Yeah, so I've had 3 surgeries on my knee and a snapped Achilles that I had to have surgically repaired. So all of them come with long rehab times. So yeah, they probably have slowed down my career, but you know, I'm still walking. So as long as I can walk, I can fight.
How did you do in judo?
How did I do? I did
to what
okay.
levels?
I fought internationally for probably 10 years around the world. I mean, judo is a tough sport. I wasn't ever in like the top 10 or anything, but I think maybe like the top 30 in the world.
Okay. So you were in the judo fraternity like Kayla Harrison and Ronda Rousey, but you didn't get as high as receiving a medal or that level stuff.
No, those girls are way better at judo than I ever was.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like you mimic their game? You know, like maybe, you know, obviously the fight starts, you want to throw what you've learned with your hands or the kicks or whatever, but eventually if you can grab a hold of someone, go for a ride and then look for submissions, or how would you, I guess, categorize how you like to attack fights?
Yeah, so I think just because I did judo for so long, as soon as I am close to someone, I just instincts take over and I'm going to grab hold and try and throw them because that's just what my body wants to do. But I'm trying to work on that, and my striking's improved a lot. So I'm going to try and strike as well. And yeah, we'll see.
Who out there that fights, we'll say aside from Harrison, because that's a layup. If you just tell me that one, we all know her. But is there another judoka out there that you say, hey, I like the way he or she fights? You know, maybe same background as you.
I mean, my coach, Daniel Kelly, he had 10 fights in the UFC. and he started as a judoka and then went into MMA quite late in his career. So I feel like because he's my main coach, I'm probably he's trying to get me to do what he did and get the judo working in MMA fights like he did. So that's probably the fighter who I try and imitate the most.
Okay. I seen one recently. I don't know if you follow UFC, but Chepe Mariscal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he just recently dislocated my one of my training partner's elbows.
Oh boy. In the fight or a training partner?
Yeah, last year.
Yeah, okay. So you're not his biggest fan then, right?
We don't like him.
Yeah, we had him recently, and I thought maybe he might. I asked him a similar question because I wanted him to go back. I don't even know if you've heard of, because Dan Kelly's a nice pull. I remember him. I think he fought Rashad Evans and a few other guys.
Yeah, he beat Rashad Evans.
Yeah, and but do you go so far back to remember Carl Parisian, another judoka? He didn't compete on the international level, but he brought judo to MMA for sure and used different types of throws, which would make a lot of jaws drop.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with this person, so I'll have to look them up and see how they use their judo in MMA.
I'm telling you, if you were to do it, like just put Carl Parisian highlights, right? Yeah. I'm sure they're going to include those throws. I guarantee you're going to call PFL and go, tell the boys at Junkie, thank you, because I just learned a thing or two. Carl he would toss people and send them for a ride. And like I say, it was different setups that he had or whatever. He just came close to, he actually had a title shot against Matt Hughes. We're talking about 15, 20 years ago. Yeah. And, but he tore his hamstring. And after that, they gave the shot to someone called, what was it?
Joe Riggs.
Oh, Joe. Yeah. And Joe Riggs was overweight. And then GSP came along and the rest is history, right? But he barely missed out on a window where he could have fought. And who knows if he would have beaten Matt Hughes, because Matt Hughes was pretty good back then. Yeah. But Carl was, like I said, it was pretty cool to see just someone put judo on the map like that and make it exciting too.
Yeah, that is cool. And I think judo is getting more and more people are doing judo in MMA these days. So it's harder to throw people because they have judo experience, but it's cool to see when it does happen.
Yeah. Man, this is cool. All right. Well, I'm glad that you have a historical figure like Daniel Kelly in your corner, and you're learning from him, and then you're trying to adapt to all the new things. Are you into the calf kicks and all that stuff as well, or
we'll have to wait and see.
All right. I don't see it as much with women's MMA as I do with men's, but I've seen it in a few fights, and it's starting to take off a little bit. So yeah, it's a whole, it's MMA is just so interesting to see all the different techniques that are out there.
Yeah, it is interesting, and it's changing all the time, and new techniques are coming through, and yeah, I love watching it.
Is there one particular female fighter or male fighter, don't say Dan Kelly, you already used that one, that maybe inspired you, where you said, oh, that's just someone I look up to, or that's someone who I want to model my game after? And it doesn't have to be judoka.
No, I think just at the moment, I love Dan Hooker and the way that he approaches fights. Like when he broke his arm and he was like, it's just a scratch. I'm like, I want to be as tough as Dan Hooker. So that's probably the person I'm looking up to at the moment.
A lot of people are on the same bandwagon, and include me. He really kind of seems psychopathic a little bit, like that. He's so tough where you're like, holy cow, do I have to taser this guy for him to really, really stay down, or what? I've been hearing a lot of that from others as well, where they're just saying this guy just has another level of toughness. That's a great pull. I was just wondering if maybe when you were younger, you remember the Gina Carano days, or again, to bring her up again, Cyborg, because Cyborg did start off along with Gina Carano. Maybe she was one of the ones that might have inspired you.
Yeah, no, I didn't really start watching MMA back in that era. It wasn't until like maybe 10 years ago that I really got into it. So haven't seen too many of Gina's fights.
In 2015, did you watch the Rousey home fight, the one that was in the stadium, either in person or you were at it?
Yeah, I was there. I think Daniel actually fought on that card.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And what did you think of that? That must have been pretty huge for you in Australian. And this is the biggest fight ever because I think they broke the record for the most people. And then we had the ladies headlining. That must have been, sending you chills down your spine. Did you think one day maybe I could do that or something like that?
I hadn't even started MMA at that point, but I just remember I was a really big fan of Ronda, and she used our gym to train at leading up to that fight. So I was just really heartbroken for her when she lost, more so.
I still remember that head kick and then the punches, and I couldn't believe it. She just seemed to be steamrolling everyone. But wow, it would have been cool to be in the stadium. You were there, huh?
Yeah, I was there. It was it was pretty cool. But like the stadium was like too big, and when you're like it's a huge football stadium, so when you're trying to watch just two people in the cage, we're probably a bit too far away. But it was still cool to be there with I don't know, was it 80,000 people or something there in a huge stadium?
It was
the atmosphere.
It was like 56. I mean, the stadium might occupy that much, but I think, and I only know this not because I'm a geek on stats like that. I just happen to be looking things up lately when it came to stadiums, and that one broke the record. It was like 56 and change. So did you find yourself like looking up at the scoreboard, or were you still able to just look down at the octagon?
No, I think we probably watched the screen the most of the time. Yeah, but it was cool to just be there with that many people.
Daniel Kelly didn't hook you up with some good tickets, it sounds like.
No, he hooked us up with some pretty shit tickets.
Yeah, well, hey, at least you got in the stadium and you remember that moment. Goz and I hosted a party in a ballroom in Vegas, and what I remember was obviously Ronda was all the rage. But when moments like that happen, there's this, I call it like a vacuum, right? Because everyone's like cheering, or whatever. And then when the strike or whatever happens, there's this this gasp, and then obviously the ones that are pissed are like, no, and then the ones that are happy are like, yeah, so there's this vacuum of silence that's deafening, as weird as that sounds. And then boom, here comes the roar, and I'll never forget it because, like I say, she was mostly beloved, but I think a few people probably bet Holly, big odds. Some people just are haters, and they can only take so much amount of winning, and
yeah, for sure. Yeah, being there was cool. You don't get the same feeling if you're just watching it at home on your TV, but when you're surrounded by 50,000 other people and you're all feeling those emotions, then yeah, it's fun.
There's not many of you, but these are two of the most talented 45ers, folks. Sara Collins, our guest here, against Leah McCourt, and the fights take place on the 14th. It's the Bellator Champions Series. They're out in London, and remember, the fights can be seen on Max. And Sara, I want to thank you for being on MMA Junkie Radio today. It's been a pleasure. I'm not sure if you're there yet, but safe travels, safe weight cut. Have a hell of a fight. We'll be watching.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for asking no dumb questions.
Yes.